Kakti. How are you? All right. So I am the only one who speaks English here, and I hope language is not a barrier for our understanding and our knowledge sharing session that we are trying to have. Afternoons are a little lazy, so thank you. Okay, so afternoons are a little lazy, so just hang in there with me. If you can tweet, you can do social media posts, whatever you like, and feel free to pay attention to this as well if you feel like. In my talk today, I'll have three things that I will talk to you. First, I'll talk about e-commerce revenue driver, and this discussion is mostly focused on e-commerce. What drives revenue in e-commerce is what I'll talk first. One of my favorite thing is pricing, which is, if you are able to improve price, you're adding to the margin of your business rather than you're adding to the revenue of your business. I will explain, how do you do conjoint analysis to understand how much a consumer is willing to pay for your different products. I would also explain, how you can do demand indexing for different products of your e-shop or your online store. And then lastly, I will also talk about price A/B testing, which is, without really doing any server changes, without any coding, without any, software, how do you test different price point and reaction of consumer to different price point. Finally, I'll have a small story. It's actually a Russian story, so I'll talk and leave you with the story to take action on. All right? Okay, so if you look at these four things that are available in the screen, these are four major drivers of your store. Either you increase visits, you get more people to come to your site, or you increase conversion rate, or you increase more quantity, or you induce people to buy more, or eventually you sell at a better price. If you look at the relationship, if you multiply all four of them together, it will end up in your revenue. So these four things are pillars for your revenue. If you can touch any of these four things, obviously you're basically doing contribution to your business. You're making a change, which is what your business would prefer to do. This is a study that McKinsey did. McKinsey actually did a research on large organizations what happens if demand remains same and the prices of different products is increased by just 1%. If it is just increased by 1%, if you are able to improve pricing yield by 1%, the operating profit would increase by 11%. So it's an exhibition of how much a small change on a price would result into a long-term operating profit for your business. Pricing is a double-edged sword, actually. So if you make a mistake in pricing, either you're eating into your profit, so your consumers may be willing to pay more for your products, but you are not charging them, or you're charging less and you're eroding on your reputation. So it's a double-edged sword. So that's why it's very important to do pricing very thoroughly, very slowly, and methodically. This is another research that I came across, which was done in US. I could not come across a Russian research which is similar to this, but 43% of people buy online because of convenience. They don't buy because you're cost effective. They don't buy because you sell low cost. However, we don't know how to monetize this convenience, right? If there is a way to monetize this convenience, there would be something which you would obviously be able to add to your profits. A typical way a normal business would price this product is, you have a cost of product and margin and shipping, and then everything added to the price. In e-commerce, you probably leave margin. You want to grow. You want to increase your revenue. So you probably let go margin as well. But eventually, that's how you price. Cost added to shipping and probably not forego on the margins. And that's what most business do. In the developing countries, in India, in most likely in Russia, this is exactly how it happens. Essentially, we are not paying attention to one lever as a pricing, which is extremely important to an e-commerce store. When a transaction happens, what does happen really? Well, what really happens? Your consumers give you money. They pay you, and what they receive is a product and convenience. E-commerce stores, we are as an e-commerce store, we try and get into a situation that I really want to grow fast. So I want to be cost effective, because cost effective is the fastest way to grow. But we often forget that there is a convenience that consumer or a buyer is getting, and you should really try and figure out a way to monetize this convenience for your e-commerce store. So let me come back quickly to the tactical part, the action, what you can take after I explain the revenue drivers. When you are trying to work on pricing, when you start that, okay, I want to change, improvise on my pricing yield, I want to change my prices, I want to improve my margins, how do I go about it? You should ask 3 questions basically. First question is whether your customers are really willing to pay more, and they are telling me directly, right? Not from a back door, not from they telling to an agency, and agency tells you to do that directly. Second question that you should know is whether certain set of my products has an inherent demand. You probably would be selling 30,000-40,000 SKUs for your e-commerce store, and you would want to know, are there certain products, certain set of products that exhibit higher demand that you are not aware of, and would you be able to test different prices without any backlash from a consumers? Anybody here remembers a specific case when Amazon tried changing the price? Anyone aware of it? No? Okay, Julia knows, of course. So Amazon tried doing some pricing things, and there was a huge press backlash. But Amazon is Amazon. They're a really large organization. Press doesn't care for mid-sized organizations. So these are 3 steps. What do? We try and work on a conjoint analysis to identify willingness to pay, consumers' willingness to pay. And I'll quickly go as to how do we identify it, and eventually from there we try and understand whether products have demand or not, whether the products do exhibit that they really are better and the consumers are really wanting such products. And then we combine both of these metrics together and see what results do we get. Quick understanding of conjoint. Is there anyone here understands conjoint? Conjoint? All right. Okay. I have some audience. Thank you. So conjoint is a technique which allows you to determine what are the key decision factors that you have, which leads people to make a buy decision, which tells what are the factors. Are these factors price? Are these factors convenience that they get? Are these the product liking, or is it a delivery time? Is it a shipping cost? There are a ton of factors. So conjoint analysis identifies that when a consumer makes a decision, what are really factors that consumer is taking into account, and what's the different value of each factors that they are trying to take decision. So this is what you do on a thank you page of your e-commerce store. When consumer finishes an order, you ask this as a question, as a pop-up, and it's very simple JavaScript pop-up, and ask consumer to rate, if you were to buy next time, if you were to buy dinner online next time, how would you rate different options? So they rate different options and they provide you an answer of a complete decision making process that they have. The factors is, what type of cuisine you want to have it, what distance do you want to have it from, or what are the ratings of different possible options, and the prices for them. The price is the most important factor here in our case, because what we want to understand is that how much price is important in decision making process. You should carry out these when you are starting this. You should do it with 2 variables. Don't complicate things. You can prepare card and discard cards. You have to have a logical cards to do it, and you have to present the card with a thank you page as well. So this is what you should do from an operational standpoint. This is what you get eventually in a form of a utility function. The utility function says that consumers have these factors and distance, type of cuisine, and dollar as an important factor for them in their decision making process. The next slide will make it very clear. This is what you get. The vertical axis is the utility weight. How much in that decision making different factors are really important. If we see in this data that I am showing is the actual data of one of our customer, and it says that the price has a 46% weightage in the decision making process for all the products put together, all the transactions that you have. Now I'll take a moment here and explain or ask a question to you guys. Do you guys know this, that your consumers, when they take decision, price is 46% important or 50% important? Do you guys have any way, do you guys do it in some way, or is it important for you to know that my consumers are price sensitive, not price sensitive? Okay, I'll let it go. Okay, so what it means is that price is important, very important in understanding overall load. What we did in this case, that you can also find the people who show you can have an individual utility function for each person, and you can also find some certain segments which are not price sensitive. What we found in the first case is we found that are there different factors in consumers decision making online, and what's the worth of each factor in decision making online. So that's the first thing that we did to understand willingness to pay, WTP. That's the first step only. There are 2 more steps to go there. The second step is to understand the natural demand that products exhibit in the second phase, where to understand what's the natural demand, what's the relative demand different products have amongst themselves. So what we do is we create a demand index, and demand index is a function of different user actions that users have done. And then we create demand index and plot it with a percentage revenue that these different products have contributed to, and understand whether the products are important or not. Now if you look at it, these are the factors which indicates whether the product is in demand or not. You have a cart to detail rate, buy to detail rate, page views to unique page views, negative indicator as a cart removal, and there are a variety of factors. You can add a couple of more factors depending upon your store as well, and you can also deseasonalize the demand index. So what you do is some products would have a higher demand in certain period of time, and some products would have a lower demand, so you want to deseasonalize that as well. It's a bit of a math. You can run a regression equation. This is sample data if you can see it, but this is sample data, and you run a regression of a demand index as a function of different factors that you did. From a practical execution standpoint, what you should care is you should probably not want to spend a lot of time on it and make it very simpler, because what you're not trying to do is to build a prediction model to understand what is demand. You're trying to compare the different demand index amongst the products. Easiest way that I have found is have a quantity of product as an independent variable, which is sort of here, and have all the other user action on the right hand side of equal, and you got your model pretty much. I mean, you got your starting of the model to understand the demand index. Now this is what you can get. Each circle here represents product. The horizontal axis indicates the demand index from 0 to 1, which is normalized, and the vertical is the percentage revenue contribution that you have. You see this set of products in the red circle, which are exhibiting higher demand, but they are not really having higher revenue, and this seems to be a case where these products, in comparison to other products, have exhibited a better demand. And what you want to do is you want to give more exposure, you want to test these products as well. What we did in our experiment is we combined all these products in a form of a category, and eventually we combined the first action that we did. First act we did is to willingness to pay. So I'll take a step back. What we did first is we understood earlier that what are different factors that consumer take into making a decision, and how much price is important for them. In the second step, we combined different demand of a different product, whether there is a specific set of product which exhibits higher demand, and then we get a combination of WTP and demand index for different categories as well as for different products. If you see this table, I have a food category A, food category B, and food category C for different buyers. The number in the table indicates how much opportunities exist for price improvement for a different segment of people and different categories of the product. It is very commonsensical that the data says that it's okay to increase price for repeat buyers, because repeat buyers have exhibited less price sensitivity. It is a common sense, right? But we don't look at repeat buyers. We look at this data only to check that my numbers are right, my process is right. It says that the process is right because repeat buyers always have a more inclination, or if they're okay with even buying at more price. What is more important here, the action that you would want to take is food category B has exhibited the maximum amount of demand from two factors. One, willingness to pay, and second, the demand index. So we combined that and we recommended our customer to increase the price for food category B. So then the customer said that, okay, I still don't believe your math, how do I do it? And I said, okay, we'll find out a way for you to test prices as well. And that's the next section. If you want to test prices, if you want to test different price points for your product, for your e-commerce store, let me show you a methodology to do it. This is a typical Russian e-commerce store for florist.ru. Sorry, if someone from Florist is there, I just took a screenshot of them. And what happens is, the actual base price of a product is $17.10. When you work with Lyft Suggest as a solution, you implement a JavaScript on all the pages, and that JavaScript changes the price for a certain set of visitor to 2010. And so what happens is this is the conventional A/B testing. Certain set of people see 2090 as a price, and a certain set of people see 1710 as a price. I understand on your back end there is only one price for all the products, but we are not changing price on the back end. We are not doing anything on your back end. There is no server integration, there is no server side coding required, nothing required, just one JavaScript. So what happens when people say that, okay, I want to buy, or click on add to cart, this is what happens. Sorry, I use Google Translate to sort of make it Russian, but what it says is that great news, the prices are reduced to 1710. So essentially what we did is, people who saw 2090 as a price, we put them back. We asked them that, okay, prices are reduced, and everybody eventually transacts at 1710. All the customer would transact at 1710. However, in this entire process, we learned one thing, is this, that how many people clicked on add to cart at 1710 and how many people clicked on add to cart for 2090. So we essentially increased the price and measured whether there are people, even at a higher price, are willing to add to cart of a product without really bothering that it's a higher price. We also measured what were the number of transactions for that product for the period of experiment, is whether they are really, when they see their priming, their first impression of a price is 2090, are they still buying or not? And you can see the data that compared to the base price of 1710, the version which had a higher price even ended up with a better performance in terms of number of transactions, in terms of number of add to carts as well. Right? It's not common sense. People pay more. If you ask, people will be willing to pay more for special products, for the products where there is no competition, for the situation where they want flowers like tomorrow. Right? We are trying to find these special use cases, and eventually this is what happens. I hope everybody is able to understand this. If you have a question, just raise your hand and feel free to ask. But eventually, this is what we are trying to do, and let me make it very clear that when you try and find out for 10 products, 3 of them succeeds. When you run it for 10 products, you find value in 3 products only. So it's not very, like you run it and everything starts, every time you start getting the recommendation that you increase the price, every time it's not successful. 3 out of 10 is a success rate right now. Essentially what is happening here is, we are trying to find those products where if we make an increase in the price, is there an increase in add to cart, and can we prove it scientifically with a statistical methodology rather than my CEO telling me. Right? I don't trust my CEO, or I don't trust client CEO, because they would have their own ways to do it, rather than let data decide what consumers would want to pay, rather than somebody sitting in a plush office. Right? From a typical execution standpoint, what you should do is, you should do this conjoint process first, and it's not easy. It will take a couple of months of implementation, data collection, data analysis, some more research that you would want to do, and then you should have a continuous demand indexing that I showed you earlier, and these 2 things put together eventually should have a continuous price A/B testing that I showed you in the 3rd section. And these are the results for one of the store that we work with. Please bear with me, this will take a bit of an explanation on my side. If you see this yellow, it's growth rate for every month. The dark yellow is an impact of price into that growth. So growth rate, if you see growth rate, I showed you 4 different drivers, right? Price, quantity, conversion rate, and visits. From that 4, we calculated that if we grew by 30%, what was the contribution of price, what was the contribution of quantity, what was the contribution of conversion rate and visits to this growth rate. If you see, we had 3 spikes in the growth rate. Each of these 3 spikes either combined with a price improvement, or they were preceded by price improvement. See, if you see the second one, there was a price improvement and then the growth was resulted into, and the growth was resulting from price. Now this is not a spectacular case because it took 15 months to do this. It's a slow process. It's a step-by-step process. It doesn't happen overnight. Our CEOs, clients are always interested in getting the results. You increase X by 50%, Y by 40%. You give me results overnight. I'm absolutely against those policy, and we don't work with those clients where they don't believe that things can happen slowly, gradually, and things does improve. Just so you know, these are the seasonal times. Last couple of months were season times, so you see a lot of spikes in the growth as well. But this e-commerce store is something which we have been associated for about 5 years now, and they sell clothes to Indians outside India. One of the largest store of those, they sell clothes to outside India, not within India. So what we learn is, first step here, we learn that how do we identify whether there is a willingness to pay and what are the factors people have to consider in their buying decision and whether the price is important factor or not. In the second, we compare different products based on their demands, whether the products exhibit a certain demand. In the third step, we actually did a scientific test that, okay, you're an analyst, you get data, you do all those things, you proved that the price needs to be improved. However, can you still prove it? And that's the third thing that we did. So we improved we ran the test, and you can actually prove that there is a most scientific way to find opportunity and to execute the pricing improvement opportunity that exists in the world. I want to leave you with one last story before I conclude this presentation, and that story is of one of the icon that I have in my life. I play chess, and this gentleman in the photo is Mikhail Botvinnik. He was a chess grandmaster, PhD in mathematics, PhD in electronics in times of 1940. Very renowned person, very smart, and he was a coach to some of the most influential player in the history of chess. Some of his students actually ruled the chess world for 40 years, 35, 40 years. And there's no surprise, right? It's in your country. It has happened here that they ruled the world. They ruled the chess world. And if you see, if there's a game which is of a mental toughness, which is being ruled by a certain set of people, there is definitely something there, right? There's something. And I was trying to find, what it is really that Botvinnik taught them. What is it that, what were the principles behind some of the great success that we have seen? And I did a data analysis. I am a data analyst, so I cannot believe everything that someone says, that I would want data to check it. And I put together a graph which says that this is a performance index on the vertical axis, and this red line indicates the performance of these 3 students of Botvinnik in terms of their rating over a period of 40 years. And then the green line indicates the performance of rest of the players compared to them. If you see, there is a difference, that the difference is not that red is better than green. If you see, the difference is that the variation in the performance is very low in case of red line, and variation is very high in case of green line. And that's the whole point that I learned from reading the book of Mikhail Botvinnik. These were certain rules that he provided. In chess, you try and improve slowly, one piece at a time. You have 32 pieces in chess. You improve each piece one at a time. The second rule that I learned is that try and make minor, smaller improvements, and try and make impact on the smaller side rather than a grandiose 100% increase in 2 months or whatever those things that we always hear in the internet. And then hyper-objectivism. Just follow objectivism to the data to the extent that it does not bring in your mental biases to come into picture. When I put together all these things and see what it impacts is, if someone is saying improve small things, it's saying that improve the drivers that affect the change, improve things that matter, improve the pieces that matter. The second understanding that I had is that the slower, smaller, but meaningful improvements have a long-term beneficial value over a period of time. May not happen overnight, may not get you the best employee or best analyst of the company, or may not get the best analytics agency for this business, but yeah, the smaller meaningful impact has definitely a stronger value. So you have a story, you have a person who have done this, and there is an opportunity that you can all do this with a smaller meaningful impact for your business. And this is what I want to recap and say it as it is. Pricing, very important lever, most underutilized, because the way internet grows is that your CEO would want to invest into getting more people on the site rather than getting more money, because he has VC money or better funding, and he would want to grow more people but never want to focus on the margin. Common myth, all of us believe that if we are the lowest cost, that will be the best situation. And small improvements are not very shiny, people don't really care about it and all those things. So I leave this with you, and thank you for listening me. Placebos, sorry, I don't understand, but thank you so much. Thank you, I appreciate you. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm still continuing. Okay, let me do a quick poll for all of us friends here. It's a small group, so let's raise hands if we use Google Analytics every day. Okay, I have a right audience. Let's raise hands if we know R. Okay, R. R is a software. R is an open source software, which I'll talk about it. The reason I did this is to understand that there is an understanding of R that exists or not. I'll go back. So I didn't introduce in my previous slides. I'll do an honor for all of you. I am a co-founder at Tatwik. We are a web analytics agency in India and US. I started my career analyzing log files back in 2005, and been having still the same journey till tag management. Yeah, some of the tools that I've used, I do stock trading. I write program to trade automatically myself, but that's my interest, and that's just about it. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about it's a bit nerdy, it's a bit technical. So if you have a question, just raise your hand and let me know if it makes sense or not. When you log into Google Analytics, do you feel that you always get aggregated data, right? The data is always total. It's always, conversion rate 2% or visits X numbers or whatever. It's always total, right? You don't get the breakdown, or you don't get to do some nerdy high-end data analysis stuff, right? Do you feel the pain that Google Analytics is come on, it's like you know the numbers, but what do you do of the numbers, right? You don't take any action, you don't get to know anything, you don't get to take action from Google Analytics. And that's a problem that I faced, and some of the analysts in our team also faced, that what action do we take out of Google Analytics really? When it comes to action from your data needs to be processed and analyzed in a certain way which Google Analytics is not capable of. Google Analytics is a software which just collects and reports the data in the manner which is most simplified for larger number of users, maximum number of users. There are 12 million users, right? So if you are advanced user, you would not like it simply because it's not, it's not enough. It's not giving you something which you would want to analyze for. So the reason, I'll go through a couple of topics. How, why do you want to use R? R is an open source software, and why would you want to use it? And how do you get started with R and Google Analytics? And there are a couple of applications as well. So it's an open source statistical computing language. It started being open source from University of Vienna, and it is now widely used. R is a competitor to SAS. I don't know if anyone knows SAS, SAS. Okay, 2 people. Okay, fine, 3. So R is a huge competitor to SAS. SAS is a paid tool. R is a free tool. It's open source. There's a huge community that works behind it. And some of the things that you can do is you can actually do a real data analysis, statistical test like hypothesis testing in statistics. You can do some really meaningful customizable visualization. You can build predictive models. You can run forecasting using R. And all you can do it on your Google Analytics data without using Google Analytics in itself. Why would you want to use R? It's very easy to integrate. So if you want to integrate your Google Analytics and AdWords data, you can extract from both because there are free packages available in R which you can extract it. It's very analogous to Excel because it's open sourced. It is made to be very simple to use for the starters, and as you grow, it's command line, right? And for the people who are really nerdy, command line is probably the most important thing that they would want to evaluate. There are 6,000 pre-developed packages. So if you want to run an ARIMA model of forecasting, it's already done by someone. You just have to write 5 lines of code and that's it. You can do forecasting. There's no licensing cost, and which is probably the most important thing as well, that there's no cost involved. It's a free tool. It's open source. There are people who are contributing to it. And you can also contribute to it as well if you find it valuable. And this is the most valuable if you are an agency. If you are an agency, you would want to do analysis which is reproducible. Or even if you are a business, you would want to do analysis which you can repeat on, right? Not, someone did it and someone presented it and that's it. It went into shelf 2 years back and now nobody knows what happened. When you write a code to do analysis, it's reproducible. It's, you can just run the same code with the same set of data and it still gets it done. Okay, so what R does is we have a R Google Analytics as a package, and it connects with Google Analytics API, so you can extract the data from Google Analytics API. Okay, how many of us have used Google Analytics API? Okay, not bad. So API is without you logging into Google Analytics, you can extract data from Google Analytics by doing some authentication of security. So that's how APIs work. So if you are in R console, you can log into your Google Analytics from a backdoor, extract the data and show it into R. Because you are using API, it has less limitation than your reporting interface has. Reporting interface will not show you high amount of dimensions and 10 metrics. It's not possible to show it in your reporting interface because it's made for simple. It's made to for people to understand it basic things. And when you have a large amount of traffic and sampling is a big problem, you can use API to do queries in such a way that sampling effect is supremely negated or it's reduced as well. So our Google Analytics is a wrapper that is our contribution to the open source world of R, and we encourage users to use this. It's a free of cost. There's no cost associated. It's on the GitHub, and I'll send you the link whenever you want to use it. So it basically takes care of low level of plumbing of extracting data from Google Analytics, putting into R. There is also for the Google Analytics Premium user. Are there any user of Google Analytics Premium? Okay, so if you are a premium user, you can use BigQuery R as well. Okay, so how you start? You log in into R, and this is a package window where you can search for a package named our Google Analytics. Oops. And there is a certain process that you have to create an API token on your Google Developer Console. Once you get that token, client ID and client secret, you put it in the R script, and eventually you start getting the data in R. I'll go there and show it to you as well in the next use case. Let me give you a couple of quick examples that we were able to do. Can you do forecasting on the product revenue for an e-commerce store? In Google Analytics, can you do it? No, right? No? Okay. I'll show you how to do it in R after you extract the data. The second is that you do marketing campaigns, right? A lot of people do marketing campaigns, PPC campaigns, your affiliate campaigns. But how do you understand the long-term value? How do you understand the value of a campaign which you did 6 months before? Do we really take care of it? Maybe, may not be. But if you do, you can still do it with the R, and I'll show you that as an example as well. Let me show you this. This is the data that you have, and I am going through a first example of, do you want to predict the revenue based on this? This is your product revenue for 2 years worth of data, different quarters. And if you want to predict, you can run a specific query in R. I'll show it to you as well. And this is what you get. If you see, there are 3 spikes, 1, 2, and 3. And there are certain spikes at a certain seasonality level. This chart speaks for seasonality, which a normal eye cannot see it. But if you see it, this is the November. This is November, this is November, and this is November. All 3 times there is a spike in the revenue, and that's what your R software, the forecast package, will identify and tell you that these are your seasonal data. This is seasonality. So essentially, when you have your revenue data plotted against time, it is trying to decompose what was the seasonal impact, what was the trend impact, and what was the impact which nobody could understand, or the normal model could not understand. Because what happens a lot of time is that you do an analysis and you identify, oh, month over month we grew by 30%. Wow, that's great. But there is a bit more digging required, because last year you also grew the same amount, because it's a normal seasonal thing. It's not you, it's consumers. It's somebody already there, right? So when you try and de-seasonalize, when you try and understand it, you know a bit more about your data, seasonality and the trend about your data. Let me run the code in R if you guys are interested. Is it okay? Okay. This is our console, sorry. It has a 4 component. This is where you write code. This is where you get response, and this is the chart you get. So let me show you this. Yep. So this image is basically a forecasted value. This is your forecasted value of your revenue based on the past data that you have. Essentially, there are multiple models that you can see. This is the first model that I used, is forecasted value where RMSE is 13,000, which is sort of an error in forecasting, and this is a higher RMSE. So I compared that there are 2 ways to do forecast, and I'm comparing that whatever method which has a lower RMSE, I am trying to use that method. So I'll go with that method of forecasting and tell this number based on this model that I see, that I have highlighted. I hope everybody is able to see this. Yeah, okay. Another example that is very valuable that I see is for the campaign value. Now if you So what happens here is that the vertical axis is the number of transactions that happened from happened from the user, which are acquired during specific campaign. So if you did a campaign and what those user did which were acquired of that campaign over a period of time.
So these are only handful of those users which were acquired, which was the first visit was from that campaign of those users, and you're comparing that how much transaction, how many transaction are those users doing which were acquired by specific campaign. Essentially, you're trying to compare. If you do analysis here, right? This is your campaign start. In 15 days, you try and analyze that, oh, the blue line is better, campaign B is better, absolutely. But if you do it over a longer period of time, you know that the black line is better because you're looking at the data set which is larger, longer term, and you make so this is far more stable, right? These users are continuously improving. Their transactions of those users are continuously improvement. Versus the users which are in blue, which are sort of steeping out after a period of time. So you're basically getting better users from campaign B black line versus from the campaign A, which is blue line. But you will only know if you look at the users for a 2 months period or 6 months period versus only a shorter duration of period. And Google and all these codes, all the codes of this example, if you want to run it in R, is going to be made available on Agima's Facebook page. So I'll pass it on to Agima, and they'll definitely make it use it. But that's all I had from my part on R and Google Analytics. A bit nerdy, so pardon me if something is not properly explainable in Russian. But do reach out to me or the guys at Agima. They are pretty smart guys, and let them know about your endeavors in R as well. So, all right, thank you so much. Spasibo. If you have a question.
If you have a question.
We can get this data from segments of Google Analytics, yes?
Yes, segments done in a specific way. However, if you go, so you can create a segment for this and this in Google Analytics, yes, and measure the transaction. You can do that, certainly. So the data is still from Google Analytics. The source of data is not changing. The way you look at data is changing. In addition to that, how do you measure whether this line is stable or this line is stable? Right? Google Analytics cannot tell you that. When you use R, you can measure the stability of your performance of user. You would want to get a certain set of users who are consistent in nature. Not, suddenly you get more traffic and suddenly more transaction, then spike down. Right? So if you want to do a bit more statistical inference out of your data, R is better. But otherwise, Google Analytics, yes. The data source is Google Analytics. You're right.
Thank you.
Answer the question.
Еще вопросы? Вау, класс.
Is your program also compatible with Google AdWords data? Can it extract it?
Just a small correction. It's not my program. We just contributed to the open source.
The program you're talking about.
Sure. No. So our Google Analytics is something that we contributed, but there are some other people who have developed our Google AdWords. So there is a way by which you can extract the AdWords data into R.
Yeah. Theoretically, I can aggregate both of these types of data.
Sorry.
Theoretically, I can aggregate both these types of data within this
absolutely
interface.
For sure, 100%.
Great.
Okay.
Еще вопросы появились со временем? Ну ладно. Спасибо. Thank you so much.
Thank you.